Domenic Carosa has had a fascinating life. He predicted what would happen to the music companies if they didn't understand the downloading that was ahead of them, and he was right. And now he's predicting that exactly the same thing will happen to film companies if they don't understand it. And they're showing all signs of not understanding it. Then, of course, Domenic was caught up in the Opus affair, which meant that he lost his company and had a pretty tough time. Now he's running an internet startup company where he funds internet businesses. And what he's predicting is that if we get a national broadband network, we're going to see a boom in internet companies, the like of which we haven't seen for a while. In other words, it's a totally new run of internet startups, and he wants to be part of it. Domenic, the music publishers have really messed up their online distribution. Where do they go wrong?
Yeah, well, I think they went wrong about 10 years ago with the advent of Napster. They didn't see the calling, millions of people globally wanting to download digital music, and they were trying to really adopting a strategy of protecting their content. And basically the digital genie was already out of the bottle, and they basically lost millions and millions of dollars every year from piracy because consumers wanted content in digital format. And one of the things that we launched and predicted in the late 90s was that all music would be in MP3 format, an open format. And it's only really in the last couple of years that the record companies have finally seen the light and released all their content in MP3. But unfortunately, in my view, they've lost that particular game.
And the film companies are going to do the same thing. They're just as silly.
I'm actually seeing deja vu. The film companies have somewhat learned from the record companies, but they're still making the same mistakes. And some of the initiatives like Muse releasing their content on a global basis simultaneously makes a lot of sense. They've still got the whole notion of windows. It's in the cinema first, and then it basically goes to DVD. My view, global distribution and simultaneous distribution across all platforms will become inevitable, because if I want to watch a particular movie, ultimately it's got to be the customer's choice. Whether I go to the movies and pay a premium or download it and watch it in my own home, that's actually going to be a choice that I make as a consumer. And I think those kind of walls will eventually come down.
You think Rupert would be smart enough, wouldn't you? Rupert Murdoch.
Oh, I think he's an exceptionally talented individual. I think they're making headways, but it's one of those things when you're stuck in the old economy and you have one foot in the old economy and one foot in the new economy, it's always a hard balancing act. And that's why I think there's a lot of the new economy companies out there that are not constrained by effectively the old, are able to really take advantage of these changes that are going on in this market space.
Your company's Destra. You own a big chunk of it and you got caught up in the Opus exercise. How did that affect you personally?
Yeah, well, I was running Destra for 8 years, and then in March 2008 I lost all my equity and basically lost control of my company and got taken over by Prime Media in April 2008. So there was definitely an aspect of a significant loss of capital, of cash. And then secondly, basically losing control of my company. That was just as hard, if not harder, than losing the X millions of dollars in capital.
What happens to you in your personal life when that sort of situation takes place?
It very much turns it upside down. It was certainly a difficult process that I went through. I went overseas for a month on a yoga retreat just to rebalance myself. And then I basically came back, got tapped on the shoulder by some of the old Destra shareholders who had supported me for a number of years and said, what am I doing? I said, well, I'm setting up an internet investment company because internet is, in my view, the future and it's what I know. And over the last couple of years, we've got I've raised some capital from a number of investors, and we're now investing in a bunch of internet companies.
Did you lose some friends in the process?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. When I first listed the company in 2000, I magically made all these extra friends that I didn't know I had.
You were in the rich list, of course. Or something
well,
like
it was there was quite a few zeros on my name, and then through Opus Prime and losing all the equity,
the zeros went away.
The zeros definitely went away, and I was certainly able to. It became a lot clearer who my friends were and who my friends were not. And in fact, I look at it, 2.5 years later, it's actually one of the best things that actually ever happened to me, because it really helped clear my life and clear the kinds of things that I want to work on. And for example, these days, rule number 1 is I only ever work with people that I like, and rule number 2, always take money off the table, because with Destra, as you know, I never sold a single share in my entire life.
So the money stayed on the table. I know it's hard to talk about it, but that APIS situation is still around, is it?
Yeah, I'm in still. I won't say anything and to prejudice any discussions, but I've still got conversations going on with the administrators, and in my view they're being unfair and unjust. I've already been kicked in the guts once, and they're basically trying to kick me again. So it's just one of those things that will pan out, and over time we'll recover from that.
So how's your investment company going, and what sort of companies are you investing in?
Yeah, Futire Capital is our investment company. We've made a number of investments, and we typically invest in what we call internet upstarts. So that is internet companies that have been around for 12 plus months, have existing revenues and customers, and what that does from an investment perspective is significantly reduces our risk. And we typically look for companies that are highly scalable, low touch, local with global potential, and most importantly, make money while we sleep.
So what are some of the bigger ones you've invested in?
We've got a company called Our Wishing Well, which is one of the largest online cash gift registries, a very highly scalable business with 80% of its business offshore. In the last 2 months, we've invested in another 2 companies, one called cheaphotels.com.au, which basically is competing in the what if space, but starting to do things a little bit differently. And another company only about 10 days ago called My Guest List, which is the online hospitality CRM space. So everything that we do is purely internet focused with a transactional aspect to it.
And do you think there's going to be a lot of new companies in this sort of space?
I believe that there is another internet wave coming, not like the dot-com boom that was very much fueled based on speculation, but another internet boom based on actual reality and hard cash. And particularly with the NBN now being rolled out across the country, I actually think that is going to effectively create a new wave of a whole bunch of new internet companies that we haven't even thought about today will be enabled because of high-speed broadband.
And what about the iPhone? Does that help that process as well?
I think the iPhone, the Android, effectively the smartphone market has definitely helped bring internet to consumers. And there are some countries in Asia where there's a much higher penetration of internet via mobile than what there is actually in a physical computer. So the internet these days is omnipresent, and there is a whole bunch of opportunities in the space, and personally I love it.
And how much do you invest in each company?
Typically, our fund, Futire Capital, we're really a cross between an angel investor and a venture capitalist, and we position ourselves as a venture accelerator. Typically, our investments are anywhere from $250,000 to $1 million. So bigger than the angel, smaller than the VC, and we typically take quite a hands-on approach where we put in cash, and we also roll up our sleeves and help grow the companies, and at the right point in time, we'll help them with the trade sale.
So, what do you think are the most exciting new sort of businesses that will come out of the National Broadband Network? I
think content is definitely one big aspect, but I think one of the other things that we're really starting to see is transactional based income. In the olden days, the model was everything's free, supported by advertising, and if I take you were asking a question earlier about Murdoch and News Corp, they've released The Australian on the iPad on a subscription type model. They're very much at the forefront of what's happening in that space. I actually think consumers paying for content will become increasingly more important, particularly micro payments, and things like the iPhone really help precipitate that. And so one of the investment strategies that we've adopted is that we focus on transactional income, effectively just clipping the ticket as it goes out to the consumer.
So you think that the model of free content and advertising won't work?
Not to say that it won't work, but I believe there's greater upside in content that is basically sold on a per view or a subscription type basis. I just think that is an easy model for the customer to understand. That's not to say that the online advertising model is dead, but if you've seen that over the last few years, display advertising has actually plateaued a little and in some cases declined, while pay-per-click type advertising or CPA, which is cost per acquisition type advertising, has actually increased. So there are definitely changes going on in the online advertising space, and I think overall, from an internet perspective, online advertising is now going to be the third largest sector behind newspapers and television.
Thank you, Dominic.
Thank you.